Brandon, for the last few months, I've been quite critical of most remakes. Like, we did a video talking about remasters that I don't like, and it felt like it was just all of them. And I struggled to be positive about most of them, because I have a lot of very strong feelings to the original games as an art form, and so when you change even minor things, it can kind of undermine that. That being said, for Christmas, I got Dragon Quest 1 Plus 2 HD 2D, which you played back in its launch month. And this did something that a remake hasn't done in a very long time, which is just floor me. I was so enamored by specifically Dragon Quest 2, how good it was, how much it honored the original, but it went even further than that. I had such a good time with this. And before we really go further, I just want to say as well, the box arts, when you put them together, you get a complete image, and that's rad as hell. I can't think of another game that's done that. Look at that. So cool.
It even matches despite the big Switch 2
Despite the game
banner.
key card. I thought that would put it off center, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
How rad.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. But what about you? Do you have strong... Like, have you played the original Dragon Quest 2?
So I haven't, actually. I've played Dragon Quest 1. I played the, mobile Switch port that came out with the butt-ugly graphics. But I still had a good time because it was still very much kind of that core traditional original Dragon Quest 1 experience. So I mostly kind of understood what was going on. I think at some point I'd still like to go back and maybe play the NES version just to have as true of an experience as possible.
Yeah.
But going into 1 HD, I definitely I had the right idea of what that game is.
I think we'll focus mostly on 2, but just to quickly get through Dragon Quest 1. I liked it, but I didn't love it. The first Dragon Quest 1 is a very brief and breezy game. There's a little bit of grinding, but for the most part, it holds up tremendously well. And a big part of that is the vibe for me. With Dragon Quest 1 on NES, there's this sort of lonely vibe to it. And that's sort of heightened by the overworld music, which is all mysterious and somber. In the remake, every time you go to a new town, everybody's like, "Oh, it's the hero! Oh, look, this is my favorite guy!" It doesn't feel lonely anymore. I didn't like that. That being said, though, it's a cool alternate version. Not my definitive version of 1. It's a cool way to play, but it didn't floor me like 2 does.
I do think there is room to update the game and add a mode that just makes it more like its original experience, because I don't think it would be that much of an effort to just change some of those dialogues, remove some of those cutscenes, and let the game flow as it did in its original version.
Yeah, it's interesting because with 3 HD 2D, they really didn't change that much. That's a very straightforward conversion. Yeah. It's mostly just the visuals and the music being updated. There's some minor quality of life. 1, I think, might have more story than 3 HD 2D does, which definitely wasn't the case on NES. There's a lot of cutscenes. There's quite a lot of new characters, too. They have a lot of screen time. And, yeah, there's a lot in there. There's a few more references to 3 as well, like Robin Hood is back in here.
Right,
and there's some cool new bits there, but you're totally right. You could scratch all that stuff out and probably have a pretty loyal version. But it is what it is. And I mostly want to focus on Dragon Quest 2, because that is just a different game. It has the bones of the original, but the first Dragon Quest 2 was a flawed game, and that's what makes this incredibly interesting. Dragon Quest 2, you'd have an encounter every 4 steps you take. And then also, the balance level just felt wildly inconsistent, mostly towards the end of the game, where you barely get any experience for killing lots of really powerful enemies, so it was a grind fest at the end. But there was also very little to pave your way. I had to use a guide for most of my Dragon Quest 2 playthrough on NES, whereas here, it's fully contextualized. The balance is way better, but also, everyone was a blank slate in the original. Outside of that Moonbrook opening, where that was pretty well done on NES. After that, the story just kind of hides for a while. This version, though, has so much story.
Dragon Quest II HD 2D feels so much like Dragon Quest XI to me in the way that the story unfolds. The kind of arc by arc storytelling when you go from town to town definitely carries over from Dragon Quest XI, and it elevates 2 to such a level for me. Because, it was so cool to get an experience so similar to 11 in its storytelling, but in that, like, old-style Dragon Quest, it felt really special. And even talking, like, about the game balance, there is an early section of the game that is relatively difficult in the original, because I'm pretty sure you're by yourself. But in this version of the game, they give you the 4th party member early to kind of tease that she's going to join the party later, but also make that section easier. And in addition to that, she's talking to you the whole time, so it feels more involved.
Yeah, these are actual characters now. They used to just all be blank slates, and it's really interesting how they've characterized them. 'Cause in the original, the way that I could tell the party members apart was how annoying they were. Because the Prince of Cannock would just die all the time, because his health and defense was always terrible. Whereas the princess was the one I relied on for magic, and then the hero was just offense. And that's not the case anymore. They all still have their own abilities in combat, but they have personalities now. And the Princess of Moonbrook she's like bloodthirsty for a huge chunk of this game, and it's super interesting to have like this a scion of Erdrick, this really urgent hero who just wants to murder everybody because she's just lusting for revenge on what happened to her kingdom, and then you've got the Prince of Cannock, who's a bit more bumbly, I suppose, and then the Princess of Cannock, who is far more attuned than her brother, but also she's the youngest of the entire party, and I've seen some people a little bit afraid of how a 4th party member just throws off the vibe. You actually don't get her until I'd say maybe halfway into the game, maybe even further.
It's pretty far in, yeah.
Yeah, it's still very much a 3-person party for the majority, but she doesn't throw things off, she just enhances it.
No, the game balance was designed around you having a 4th party member by the time she joins. So, this is not a Dragon Quest II NES, rush to the finish line. They clearly took their time and made sure that this all felt right.
And it's so interesting how this very much has the structure of 2, in that the towns are still mostly the same. There's some new ones, but for the most part it is the same. And the objective is still mostly the same. Like, a large chunk of this game is a scavenger quest, where you get the boat, and you can kind of go where you want, when you want. There are objectives that you can turn on and off if you want to. But in the first Dragon Quest II, if you just spoke to NPCs and tried to find your own way, it was still very difficult. Whereas now you can turn off those objective markers, and it's still relatively clear where to go.
I'm glad you brought that up, because in Dragon Quest 3 and 1, I had the objective markers on, just because I remembered that experience with Dragon Quest 1, and I was, I didn't necessarily want to bumble my way through the game in that moment. But by the time I got to Dragon Quest 2, I said, you know what? Let's just try it and see how it feels. And you're right. I never once felt like I didn't know where to go next.
I think it's even better to play that way, because there's one point in the game where you get a flute, which echoes and tells you if you're near a certain item, like one of the key items you have to get. And if you've got the markers on, you don't need to do that. It's just marked on your map, and it takes away from that feeling of discovery. And I think Dragon Quest 1 HD 2D suffered from this in some areas too, even without the markers. Like on NES, there's one town where in the original you have to sort of walk around the border to get to a certain house.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really cool working that out, and I think it's a bit too clearly done this time. Like, it doesn't seem hidden anymore.
I think that town is in all 3 games, and I will admit, by the 3rd time I had to visit that place, I was tired of walking around the whole perimeter.
Yeah, it's annoying now rather than a cool discovery. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was fully expecting to go into Dragon Quest 2 and just kind of, feel a little ho-hum about it, maybe a little agitated because of what I had heard up to that point. We have Derek's video on the channel about Dragon Quest 2.
Yeah.
And, it was not an easy experience on NES, but I was just floored by this remake, top to bottom. I was not ready for the level of characterization, the feeling of adventure that the game has. There's a moment later in the game where you encounter a monster that does not want to fight.
Yeah.
And that was that whole like set piece is when I realized, oh, they're going hard on the plot here. I legitimately got emotional around this character.
100%. And a lot of this stuff just doesn't exist in the original. The whole like ship going under the water thing, that's a new mechanic. The mermaids, they weren't in the original. Like I think they debuted in 6, I want to say. So it's quite far into the series. And the way that they're implemented feels very much like 11, which is kind of what you were saying at the beginning. Where this, like, it wears the skin of a classic Dragon Quest, but it very much follows in the mechanics of 11 and even evolves them. Like, new to 1 and 2 are spell scrolls. Like, you can just explore around the world and find a scroll, which you can then... Like, it's like a TM, basically, where you can just give it to one of the party members. That's totally new to Dragon Quest, and it's really cool that they're implementing that here. There's also difficulty modes, which I leaned on once with like a really annoying boss. That was in 1 HD 2D, which has a few difficulty spikes, and I could feel like I could defeat him, but he just kept doing this sweep attack, which just one-shot me. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna cheese this one, put the easy mode on. It's there if you want to use it. I didn't do that at all in 2 though. It brings the series forward in a really cool way and just sort of gives you a brand new game out of it. Like, if you're someone who's just waiting for Dragon Quest 12, like, this isn't it, but it is a new Dragon Quest, and you shouldn't sleep on this. I didn't get this, like, originally, day one. This felt like a Christmas game for me, because I don't have huge feelings towards Dragon Quest 2. I love Dragon Quest 1, but it wasn't like I need a remake of it. And I also was feeling a little bit of HD 2D fatigue with so much going on. But whenever I feel that, I play another HD 2D game, and I always just love it again anyway. But yeah, this is one that I feel foolish for waiting on. This should have been a day one game, because it's just so damn good.
When I rolled credits, I was just like reeling over the experience, and you know, I posted on my Bluesky about it, and I was surprised to see so many people sharing the sentiment. Okay, I was like, okay, I did not experience this in a bubble. This game really is magnificent.
It does feel like it's kind of a secret, though. I was looking at Metacritic. Yeah. It got an 84 from critics, which isn't bad, but I also don't think it's representative of what it actually is. And I saw the user score, and it was like 74. I was like, why is this so low? And I was looking at the reviews, and it's people complaining about 1, basically, about how, you know, it's 1v like 6 monsters. It can be tedious. I think they stopped before it got good. I think you should play 1. You should play 3 as well. Both of them enhanced 2 and make 2 the most important game of the whole trilogy, which feels wild to say. But
2 definitely feels like the payoff for playing 3 and 1 before it. The game I don't think does a good enough job, like, kind of pushing you to play it in release order, despite the fact that's how they released. But it's very clear to me that it is anticipating that you have.
Yeah. It's really clever, too, because with the originals, I think you should play them in release order. Like, on NES, you should play 1, 2, 3. Because 3's got a really cool twist at the end, which, you know, harkens back to Dragon Quest 1. Whereas, with this one, I think they lean so much on Dragon Quest 3's story and events. Like, they sort of become legend and are far more established parts of 1 and 2. And then 2 just has this wonderful payoff that just really just delivers everything across the series and celebrates it in such a cool way. And I wrapped up the main game yesterday, and you said to me, have you done the post game? Which Dragon Quest 2 didn't have originally.
Yeah.
And I was like, it can wait. But then you said, no, you've got to do it. And so that's what I spent my whole evening doing. And you were right. The under the ocean part comes in a bit more in the post game. There's lots more exploring under the ocean. But also, you get the true final boss, which is just one of the coolest bosses Dragon Quest has ever had. The set piece is so amazing. It's largely 3D as well, so seeing like these 2D sprites just hanging around in it is really cool.
When it started, it was like 1 a.m. for me, and I'm just like quietly like freaking out in my living room.
Yeah.
Because the game is doing things that up to this point it had not done yet.
And yeah, I think you really just have to play it for yourself. This is more of a call to action for those who feel like this is maybe one of the lesser ones, because it doesn't seem that exciting. We've had Dragon Quest 1 and 2 released in so many different ways, But these are reimaginings, and while 1 is a bit flawed, 2 is so good. And I've seen people before saying this has become their favorite game in the series. I don't know if I'd quite go that far. Like, I still hold 5 in a very high regard, but it has skyrocketed from being like at the back of the series to being easily in the top 5.
For me, this was far and away my favorite of the original trilogy remakes.
Yeah, same.
Which I did not expect to feel going through it. And I agree. Yeah, I think it's easily a top 5 Dragon Quest game. Might even be top 3 for me.
Yeah, maybe. God, yeah. But what a cool little adventure. And just 3 months after launch, Dragon Quest VII comes along. And it's interesting how they're remaking like 2 of the lesser regarded games with 2 and 7. And with 2, they made it just absolutely incredible. So I can't wait to see what they've done with 7. And the demo's out right now for those who want to play it. But yeah, it's rare we get a remake of a flawed game. And it's even rarer that they deliver on making it its true vision, which I feel like this is what it was in the first place.
I almost think calling it a remake is doing it a disservice.
Yeah.
Like, they went out of their way to call Dragon Quest VII a reimagining, and I think that would be a more appropriate word in this case.
Yeah. I think I agree. It's just a different game. Like, it's if you've played Dragon Quest 2 HD 2D, I think you should still play the original, just to sort of get the impression for what it was. But also, you can get by playing this one as well. They both serve different purposes. They both have different experiences, and they're both good in their own right. But 2 HD 2D is just such a different tier in terms of quality. It's just such a wonderful game, and it probably is like my favorite like remake, reiteration, reimagine, whatever you want to call it. I think it succeeds at everything it wants to do.
Yeah, once you've played through Dragon Quest II HD 2D, I think it becomes abundantly clear why this took so long to make.
Yeah.
You know, 3 was announced and we waited years before we got to see it, and it was because they were making the whole trilogy and putting all of their eggs into the 2 basket.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right, because when you play 3 HD 2D, you're like, oh, this is, it's very pretty, but it's the same game.
Yeah.
Then 1, it's also like they've added a lot of story here, but it's largely the same game. And then 2 is just, they went nuts. They put everything into 2, which is crazy. But it was well deserved, and it's one of my favorite experiences I've had on the Switch too. One of my favorite experiences with Dragon Quest as a general. Just wonderful game.
And I think, like, bottom line, when we're having like the more remake discussion, neither of these games replace their originals. I think they are supplemental content. You play these either alongside the originals or afterwards, but don't play them without knowing where they came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can probably get away with it with 3 maybe, but with 1 and 2 especially, these are games that I think you should know the context of them.
It almost feels like, 3 being the kind of more direct remake was intentional, because they go into 1, and 1 almost feels like a bridge between 3 and 2.
Yeah.
Like, this is a shorter experience. We're going to up the level of the cutscenes and the storytelling a little bit before we go full, like, reimagining with Dragon Quest II. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, it kind of feels like a crescendo. It's a build-up. And I'll say it again and again, the payoff is so worth the experience.
Yeah. Well, we can just yap about this game for ages, but I think we should probably draw it here. But yeah, what wonderful games, and now we have to get through 7 as well, which is out in like a month? God, the pace that they work at's crazy.
The first like amount of that game is now available to play. Yeah,
it totally is. All right, thank you, live audience, for joining us. I know this was very short notice, but I had to yap about Dragon Quest with Brandon. So thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, all.